Hi, welcome to Witchy Wednesday. It's Lara here with your weekly astrology forecast, and this one's for the week of January 22nd to 28th, 2020. So thanks for being here. As always, I do appreciate you hanging out with me for a while, and if you have yet to subscribe to my channel, then I hope you do that. So today's video, we're going to discuss the new moon that's coming up in Aquarius over the weekend. So it'll be Friday or Saturday, depending on where you live, the 24th or the 25th. And it's a pretty electric new moon that we are about to experience. So we're going to get into that. It coincides with Chinese New Year. So if you happen to mark that occasion, then Happy New Year to you. And this new moon is going to give us some insight into things to come because it's happening in the early degrees of Aquarius, which is where there's going to be increased activity over the course of the year, and we're going to have Saturn and Jupiter coming together in late December. And that's happening at the very beginning of Aquarius. So it's like this new moon is giving us hints about what that's about. Speaking of the moon, right? Today the moon is in Capricorn as I'm recording this, and then it will enter Aquarius on Friday when we'll have that new moon, and then it will move out of Aquarius and enter Pisces on Sunday, which will be a bit of a chance to recover from the new moon, and then it will stay in Pisces until Wednesday. But although this new moon is happening in Aquarius, we've got lots of Capricorn energy still happening. And Capricorn energy will kind of continue to be the backdrop, right, for a large part of the year. We'll have asteroid Ceres is moving out of Capricorn and into Aquarius on the 31st. So again, gradually we're going to kind of get this, like, what's this Aquarius, the age of Aquarius kind of thing. What is this going to be about for us? So Ceres is moving out on the 31st, but Mars, right, planet of action and drive and will and aggression at times, is moving into Capricorn in mid-February around the 16th, and then it's staying there until the end of March. So that is going to be significant. We do have Saturn leaving Capricorn on March 21st. So on the spring equinox, Saturn will enter Aquarius. That'll be a point of interest, I think, definitely, but it's going to retrograde back into Capricorn at the end of July for a bit. So it's not quite finished, not quite finished in Capricorn, but it is going to move out. But the point here is that between like February 16th and March 21st, we will have Pluto, Saturn, the South Node, and Chariklo, who I've mentioned to you before, right? Wife of Chiron. All still in Capricorn. Chariklo is there for a while until like 2021. I can't remember the exact date, and then because of the retrograde back and forth, she's kind of hanging out, holding some space for us at those later degrees of Capricorn. And then we've got, so all of that energy is still there in Capricorn between those two dates. And Mars is moving in there and joining them. So this will be a pretty dynamic time, I think. Mars will be in there and really kind of injecting that Capricorn energy with some drive, with some force. And we'll talk more about that when the time comes. But I just wanted to give you a heads up about that. We're going to focus on the new moon for the remainder of the forecast and some things that are happening around the same time as the new moon. And of course, as always, I will go into each sign when we're nearing the end of the video here. I'm going to show you the chart right away. Okay, so here's the chart, and you're going to see, like I said, the backdrop of Capricorn is still there, and here we have it, right? We've got there's asteroid Ceres, there is Cheroklo, there is Saturn. I'm sorry, hard to see from behind. Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter, and the South Node, right? And then, but you can see here, I've drawn this chart up for the time of the new moon. And in my time zone, that is on the 24th. So that's on Friday at about close to 4:45 in the afternoon. And so we've got the sun and the moon here at 4 degrees Aquarius, right? Mercury's hanging out in Aquarius as well, a little further away at 13 degrees. And also we've got... well, there's Mars in Sagittarius right now. Eventually, like I said, we'll join the gang in Capricorn. And then we have Venus and Neptune together in the sky. I'm going to talk about that briefly. We have Chiron in Aries, who is making a sextile to this new moon, right? A sextile is a conversation of support, opportunity. And so I'll speak to that piece as well. But the other thing is there's Eris, right? Eris is in Aries, will be for a long time, has been for a long time, moves very slowly. But the point is she is still in square with the Saturn-Pluto energy, right? And that is also kind of a backdrop. I'll speak to that briefly too. But what I really want to draw your attention to is Uranus, because this is the big player in the new moon. Uranus at 2 degrees of the fixed earth sign Taurus is squaring the new moon, right? Within like 2 degrees of the new moon in Aquarius. And that's a big deal. Uranus rules Aquarius. So let's talk more about this without the paper in front of my face. With every new moon, it's always when the sun and the moon come together in the sky to birth something new. So that those two luminaries, right? The sun, which lights up the day, and the moon, which lights up the night. The divine masculine energy and the divine feminine energy, right? The yang and the yin coming together, merging to create something new. So that's a new moon. And where is this new moon happening? It's happening in Aquarius, which is a fixed air sign. Not a water sign like a lot of people think, because the symbol for Aquarius looks like waves. But Aquarius is actually, it's quite a paradoxical sign. It is, it can be a bit confusing, and you really have to kind of drill down, but also kind of look at it from a broader perspective. You kind of have to look at it from all angles, which Aquarius kind of does. Aquarius is about the individual, very much about individual identity, but within the context of the group. And it's interesting because before Uranus was discovered, Uranus is the modern day ruler of Aquarius. Saturn was assigned ruler of Aquarius. And so some people think that that's like, how can that even be, right? Those energies seem so different. But here's the way I think of it. Saturn sets the boundaries. Think about the rings around Saturn, right? I'm not sure if I've mentioned this before, but Saturn sets the boundaries. And Uranus really is beyond the boundaries, right? So the sign of Aquarius likes to push the boundaries. Saturn also rules Capricorn. Traditionally and in modern times, Saturn rules Capricorn. And it seems that energy seems to fit more because Capricorn can often be about the traditions and the boundaries and the the tried and true and the material, physical, solid world, and putting the nose to the grindstone and doing the hard work and all of that. But I think that what how Aquarius fits in there is that Aquarius is the one who pushes the boundaries, wants to go beyond the boundaries. So that's how that makes sense in my mind anyway. And like I was saying, Aquarius is the symbol of the water bearer. So not a water sign, an air sign. And so Aquarius like bestows life, right? Pours the water on to allow life to grow. Because if we didn't have water, right, nothing would grow. Water is life, quite literally. So Aquarius gives us what we need to grow towards the future. And it is a very future-oriented sign. Aquarius can be associated with, kind of like sci-fi and that sort of thing. Very, very future-oriented. And, but it's an air sign, right? So it gives us the information. And it says, here, this is the knowledge you need. This is the information that you need, so that this is the insight you need. And sometimes that insight comes in sudden flashes, to break free, to liberate yourself from whatever's holding you back. Aquarius craves freedom, is all about the freedom. And they want to be free to do, to live their life unconstrained. And they think that everybody should be. And that's how the association with the group comes in, right? Is that Aquarius it's group-minded. It's about being an individual within the context of the group, like I said. But very much the rebel, the liberator, the eccentric. And oftentimes people with strong Aquarian energy in their chart are people that push the boundaries of, fashion and beauty and those kinds of things, right? They're unconventional. They tend to be very unconventional in sometimes their appearance or their lifestyle choices, or even their ideologies, that kind of thing. So, Aquarius bucks the system, really pushes those boundaries, like I was saying, and really doesn't have any patience for arbitrary rules or, what they see as arbitrary rules or conventions. They are very humanitarian focused and often about social justice issues and causes. And they're really good at that because they're good at working in that context. And for those, for like really, really powerful social justice warriors. And part of the reason for that is because they are an air sign. So they can be quite emotionally detached from it all and not get too emotionally invested, right? And when you're working sometimes in challenging situations that are tug on the heartstrings, that kind of thing, it's really self-preservation to be able to have a bit of a boundary there and to be able to kind of be the observer a little bit and not get so emotionally invested, right? So they have that capacity. But on the downside, that kind of emotional detachment, and I'm not saying that every person who's an Aquarius is emotionally detached. I'm saying Aquarian energy, right? Because this, of course, it depends on everything else that's going on in your chart. I mean, you can be an Aquarius sun sign with a Cancer moon. You're not emotionally detached. So, but I'm saying Aquarian energy in general. And so, the issue is, though, this detachment and this, tendency to be kind of off fighting the good fight can leave them a little bit, it's not the best necessarily for interpersonal relationships, right? For closeness, for intimacy. They are known to have a lot of friends and acquaintances, but and know a lot of people, right? Because it is associated very much. This energy is associated with that of the group. But it's more like not so much about one-on-one relationships or, close, intimate, personal relationships. So sometimes that can be a challenge for them. And really, they're kind of, their Achilles heel sort of thing is their fixed nature. So, meaning they can be very obstinate, right? Stubborn, quite stubborn. And so this doesn't always serve them. This can trip them up. Because when you hold so firmly to, my way is the right way, or it's my way or the highway, or that this is the plan kind of thing, or the way I see it is the way it is, this kind of thing, it can trip you up, right? And it's not so, it's counterproductive in many situations. So they do enjoy being part of a team in general, being part of the group, being involved in the group, but they also need their own personal space, and they need their space and their time to do their own thing, and let their freak flag fly kind of thing. And like I said, and they think everybody else should be able to do that too, right? So we could say more about Aquarius. It's a complicated energy. It's quite interesting, but it's very future-minded. And this new moon may, some of us are going to feel very catapulted into the new. Particularly if you have any planets or important points, your sun, your moon, your rising, a cluster of planets, different things around around the first 5 to 10 degrees of the fixed signs, right? So Aquarius, obviously, Aquarius, Leo, Scorpio, or Taurus. You will be getting hit with this energy significantly. And I would even say, when I was thinking about this, I would even say if you have stuff going on at the very final degrees of the cardinal signs, 28, 29 degrees of the cardinal signs, right, which are Aries, Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn, then there's a good chance, you're going to feel this as well. The rest of us will experience it as well, but probably to a lesser degree, just because, we don't have, if you're somebody that doesn't have anything going on at that point in your chart, or nothing's being triggered by that, then it tends to be that, you don't experience the energy quite so strongly or profoundly. But it is this opportunity for something new is happening for all of us, and where that's happening is in the house where Aquarius sits for each of us, right? So I'm going to get to that in a second. But I want to mention a couple of other things that I pointed out on the chart to you. So the big thing is, at the time of the new moon, so the sun and the moon together are squaring Uranus and Taurus, right? Within 2 degrees, less than 2 degrees apart. And so a square is a conversation of tension, I'll remind you, right? A 90-degree angle where something's got to give. And that happens in one of 2 ways. We are proactive about it, and we take some action to resolve any tension, or we react to whatever gets, put in our path. So it's optimal to try to be proactive. However, this is Uranus energy we're talking about, which can come out of nowhere. It can just, come out of the blue and be quite surprising. And it can shock us. Uranus can bring us, sudden messages, sudden happenings and events. It can bring us sudden insights or downloads sort of thing. Like all of a sudden, you get this insight that you just never considered before, or you suddenly get this, brilliant idea for something, and it just comes into your awareness, just, almost as a complete picture. Uranus wants to shake things up. It wants to shake out any stagnancy. So where we may be feeling fenced in or held back or constricted in some way, Uranus will come in and go like, and it will liberate us. And it may be a little disorienting and uncomfortable at first, but ultimately it's for the better. So Uranus is squaring this new moon, right? And it's particularly significant because Uranus is the modern day ruler of Aquarius. And so it kind of amplifies that Aquarian energy that I was speaking about. Keep your eye on what's going on in the world around you, obviously, because sometimes even if things aren't happening in our own lives, we can see how it plays out on a more global scale or in our sphere, with the people around us. Other things that are happening at this time, the sun and the moon, I mentioned this to you, will be sextiling Chiron and Aries, right? So Chiron's sitting in Aries there at 2 degrees. So within 2 degrees of the new moon. So this indicates that there's some kind of healing process taking place here, right? And Chiron obviously is supporting this process because it is a sextile. It's a conversation of support or opportunity. So there may be an opportunity to heal something in our lives. And I see it as whatever new beginnings are happening for us now are ultimately for the benefit of our healing in the long run. They may poke at some old wounds, but it's always with the intention of healing, right? And the healing likely revolves around those Aries and Aquarian themes, whatever that means for us in particular, right? So themes around individuation, healing our identity, and the group, like maybe who we are in relation to the group, that kind of thing, or our future, our hopes and dreams for the future. That's just a couple of possibilities. And the other couple of things that are happening around the time of the new moon, although not necessarily in direct conversation with the new moon, but I think it's just relevant to touch on them. I pointed out to you, Eris is still squaring Pluto and Saturn. That's a long haul transit. So there is, and we can see this playing out in the world, right? There is definitely a deep kind of transformation going on in terms of that divine feminine warrior energy in the collective. So there's that will continue. And then we have Mercury and Mars that are sextiling each other, right? Mercury is there in Aquarius as well, and Mars is in Sagittarius at 13 degrees. No, Mars is 14 Sag, Mercury's 13 Aquarius. So they're in a close sextile. Again, positive conversation of opportunity. So maybe giving us the courage, to really assertively articulate our thoughts, our ideas, that kind of thing. That's those two energies marrying together in that way. Just keep in mind, assertiveness is not aggression, and Mars can have that tendency, but this is a sextile, so hopefully it doesn't go that way. And then the last thing is that Venus and Neptune are conjuncting. So I showed you that on the chart. They're very close together in Pisces, and this may bring a little bit of softening to that erratic energy, and particularly maybe when the moon moves out of Aquarius and into Pisces right at the end of the weekend, where we may feel a little bit of time to, just reorient ourselves and catch our breath after that new moon jolt. This energy with Neptune and Venus, it's like big love, right? Because Venus is sort of like more interpersonal love, and Neptune is more like worldly love, like love on a universal scale, like divine love, right? Spiritual love, that kind of thing. So this can be really dreamy, compassionate energy. It can be about spiritual bonding in relationships, creative flow, this kind of thing. It's a good time to maybe focus our energy on either spiritual or creative pursuits, or doing, like, it's even just good for kind of relaxing, watching a movie, having a nice dinner sort of thing, that kind of energy where it's, like I said, maybe a bit of, a deep breath and a kind of sigh after the new moon energy. Having said that, new moons are the best time to begin something new, to plant the seeds specifically for what you want to grow over this lunar cycle, and even over the next kind of 6 months. And where you plant those seeds should be in relation to where the new moon is happening in the chart for you. So, which I'm about to get to, but I just want to say this piece first. So the best time to do this is probably in the couple of days following the exact new moon, because when the moon is just new, she's still dark. And then she begins to grow, and we see that first sliver, right? The day or two after. That's the best time to really work with the new moon energy and to plant those seeds of intention and think about the characteristics of Aquarius, right? And where, in relation to where this energy is falling for you, where do you want to free yourself? Where do you want to be liberated? And how? And what can you do to that end, right? What can you begin now that can help you liberate yourself in whatever area of life that is happening for you? And then as we move through the lunar cycle, the moon is waxing, so the energy is building, and that's when you start to put those intentions into action. That's how that works. And incidentally, right now, as I'm recording this, these couple of days before the new moon, the moon is at her lowest ebb. So she's really, the energy is really, really low right now. And we feel that. We tend to feel that on a physical level. For example, I know in our house, we've been having the conversation, you really tend to need more sleep when the moon is waning, but particularly around these days prior to the new moon. And if you take note of that, for yourself, and oftentimes around the time of the full moon, we're a little more restless and we need less sleep. So that's, simple info for tracking the moon. And if you're interested in more of that and knowing more about that, then head over to my website for sure and download the free guide to working with the moon. And that gives you a real, simple but solid foundation to begin that practice. Okay, so let's get on with it in terms of going through each of the signs. I'll do this fairly briefly, but I will speak to where this new moon is happening for each of you, and where the square from Uranus is coming, what house that's coming from. So first and foremost, rising sign, right? Let's listen for your rising sign in these general forecasts. It is tends to be the most accurate, the most sort of obvious. And then if you know your moon sign, you can listen for that. Of course, listen for your sun sign. You will get information there as well. Definitely. So beginning with Aquarius rising, Aquarius sun and moon. This is your new moon, Aquarius. And so it's happening in your first house, right? The house of you, the house of the self, the house of your individual body and your physical vitality, physical appearance. It is like the first house is what we're born into, and it's our first, responses to the world around us, our instinctual responses to the world around us. And it marks our trajectory through this incarnation, right? Our first house. And so with the new moon happening here for you, the square from your ruling planet Uranus is coming from the fourth house, right? Which is home, family, place of living, your roots, your emotional sense of security, the nurturing female figures can be the mother. So there is a real opportunity here for you for a fresh start in who you are out in the world and in how you approach the world. And there may be some tension to work out, between that first and fourth house that I just mentioned. Does that mean a bad thing? No. It's a dynamic conversation, which is really when we work through the squares in our chart in particular. This is how I see it, and I think many other astrologers see it this way too. That is our greatest opportunities for growth. So that's where the new moon is happening for you, Aquarius. Please listen to the intro because it's really all about you. So I don't want you to miss out on that. Moving on to Pisces, where we've got the new moon happening in your 12th house. So Pisces, the 12th house is your place. It's your home. Pisces is at home in the 12th house. So you're used to this energy. It's very mystical. It's what goes on behind closed doors, right? In the unseen world. So it's about spirituality and mysticism, and it is about the dream world, and it's also about those unconscious behaviors that can trip us up. So the self-sabotaging sort of habits that we have. It can also, on a practical level, speak to actual places that are kind of tucked away from the world. Oftentimes we think of that as, I've said this, whenever I talk about the 12th house, it can be things like hospitals and hospices and spiritual retreat centers. It can be, like detention facilities, rehabilitation facilities, all of these kinds of things, our 12th house. So something new is transpiring in relation to those themes. It may be surprising. It may come out of the blue. And there may be some tension between that and Uranus from the third house, which is your immediate environment, right? The people and places in your immediate environment, the communications you have with those people, or just communication themes in general, and it reflects your peers, your siblings, your cousins, your neighbors, the people in your community, teammates, that sort of thing. And it's also could have to do with like short jaunts, short distance travel. So these two areas of the chart are in conversation at the time of this new moon for you. So that's what's going on for you, Pisces. And then we've got Aries rising, Aries sun, Aries moon, where we've got the new moon for Aries rising happening in the 11th house specifically, right? So the 11th house, Aries, is the natural house of Aquarius. So it has that Aquarian vibe. It's about the group. Friendships, associations, clubs, organizations. It's about your hopes and dreams for the future, right? So that future vision and the people that walk the same path as you that perhaps can help you reach those visions for the future. So something new is transpiring here. Again, maybe a bit shocking. It may come out of nowhere. It may be surprising. It may be a sudden kind of piece of information that comes in, some kind of sudden occurrence that happens. And it may involve the second house, themes in the second house, because that's where Uranus is sitting, right? And it is squaring this new moon. So second house is your values, your personal values, what you value, your sense of self-worth, your actual material resources, so including money, but your personal resources as well, like time and energy, right? So there's this interplay between the 11th and second house, but what's wanting to be birthed is in the 11th house, or where you may want to be liberated in some way is in the 11th house, right? And so listen to the intro so that you get more insight into what the energy is all about. We're going to move on to Taurus now. We've got the new moon happening in the 10th house for you. So Taurus, the 10th house is a very public house, right? Your public reputation and your status and authority and your relationship to authority and your career and your worldly ambitions and the legacy that you wish to leave. And so maybe there's something that you feel is holding you back here, Taurus, and you wanting to break free from that. This new moon can be the opportunity to put that in motion. Or it could just be something happens in that area of the chart that kind of catches you off guard, right? And it may involve some tension between that and the first house, which is where Uranus is in your sign. So bringing some tension between those two things. And the first house is the house of the self, having to do with your physical body and your physical vitality and your individual person and your like how you respond to your environment and to what's going on around you, right? How you present, how you appear out in the world. So those are the areas of the chart being hit for you, and that new moon is specifically in the 10th house for you, Taurus. Then we've got Gemini, where we have the new moon happening in your 9th house of long distance travel and your philosophies and belief system, your worldview in general. It has to do with teaching and learning and publishing, all of those themes. And for you, there may be a bit of a surprise that comes, revolving around these themes. And it may, or you want to liberate yourself in some way, regarding one of or more of those 9th house themes. And now's the chance to do that, to put those seeds in motion. And you've got a bit of tension happening from the 12th house where Uranus is squaring. The new moon in the 12th house is your internal, well, it's like the unseen, right? And what goes on behind closed doors and your spiritual wellness and your spiritual connections, and your self-sabotaging behaviors, and places like that are tucked away from the world, like hospitals and prisons and spiritual retreat centers and all manner of other things you can think of that fit that category. So Gemini, this is what's happening for you. The 9th house is the focus of the new moon. And so please make sure that you listen to the intro for all the info. Okay, Gemini? We're going to move to Cancer now. Cancer, we've got the new moon happening for you in your 8th house. So something new is transpiring, or you are hoping to be liberated in some way in regards to your close, intimate connections, right? Like those people that you bare your soul to. This has to do with deep psychological issues and wounding and healing and other people's money, other people's resources. So money, energy, time, right? And how that comes to you through other sources rather than just you kind of, using your skills and talents. And it's about, money that comes through. It can be partnerships. It can be, insurance and taxes and inheritance and all of that. So And then it's squaring your 11th house, which is about the group, about your friendship groups, right? About organizations and associations. And it's about your hopes and dreams for the future. And so there can be some tension between those two areas of the chart. But ultimately, the new moon energy is focused on your 8th house there, Cancer. Okay, moving on to Leo. Leo, we've got the new moon happening in your 7th house of one-to-one personal relationships. And contracts as well fits into here, because we think of like marriage contracts, for example, but it can be any kind of contracts and any kind of one-to-one relationship. And so this is where the new moon is hitting your chart. Maybe you feel like you need some freedom in this area a little, or to be liberated here in some way. And the new moon can help with that, can help you plant those seeds. And it's being challenged by the 10th house, Uranus in the 10th house, right in the square, which is your public reputation and your persona and your status and your career and your worldly ambitions and the legacy you wish to leave. So those two things are in a bit of a tense conversation, but ultimately can really result in some fresh start happening for you when you work through that. So that's for you, Leo. Moving on to Virgo, where we've got the new moon happening in your 6th house of the daily grind, Virgo, and your routines and habits and your health habits, and pets fall into this category as well, because it's who you are in service to, right? Often we are in service to our pets. And it's about these relationships of kind of unequals. So employer, employee, teacher, student, that kind of thing. So the new moon is happening in relation to this house. And maybe you want to liberate yourself from your current daily routine, for example, or from some kind of bad health, routine that you're in. And this is a good time to do that, Virgo. You may be challenged a little by the 9th house. So this is, your belief system, your philosophies, your worldview, what you think about things. On a bigger scale, it has to do with teaching and learning and potentially long distance travel, right? Anything we learn or experience through that which is different from us. And so Virgo, this is what's going on for you in terms of those two pieces. Ultimately, it can be a really liberating time, but maybe not without a few, kind of surprises. So that's what's going on for you. And we're going to move to Libra, where we've got the new moon happening in your 5th house, Libra, which is having to do with your individual creative self-expression. So any creative, projects or any creative hobbies, interests, anything like that. What sparks joy for you? Also has to do with children, your children, or children you work with or are associated with in some way. And it has to do with the romantic side of love as well. So this is where the new moon is happening for you. A fresh start is on offer. And you may want to liberate yourself in some way in this 5th house. And you've got Uranus squaring this new moon. Uranus coming from the 8th house, squaring the new moon. So that may be a bit of tension there that has to do with other people's resources, their money, their time, their energy. It may have to do with some sort of psychological healing and or wounding on your part. Any kind of real intimate sort of subjects and connections. So listen to the intro, Libra, to get more of a flavor of this full moon, or new moon rather, but that's what's going on for you. And then we have Scorpio, where we have the new moon happening in your 4th house, Scorpio, which is home, family, place of living, emotional security, right? And so this may be an area that you want to breathe some new life into. You want more freedom in some way, or something new will come into your experience. And that may be challenged from the 7th house, which is the house of one-to-one relationships and contracts, agreements in that regard. And so, but that's because that's where Uranus is sitting and in a square to this new moon, right? As I mentioned in the intro, which please listen to for all the details. But you have the opportunity here to begin something new in this fourth house during this time. And so that's where you want to focus planting those seeds of intention. Okay, moving on to Sagittarius. Sag, we've got the new moon happening for you in your third house of your immediate environment, of all things communications, of your peers and your siblings and your cousins and your neighbors, of like short jaunts and commutes and travel. And it's being challenged by Uranus and Taurus in the 6th, right? So your daily routine and your health and wellness routines and how you are in service and those relationships between people that are not on a level playing field. So you have the chance to plant some new seeds in the third house, right? Those themes I just spoke about, and liberate yourself in some way there. And you may have a bit of a bump from the 6th house, but nothing that you can't ultimately work through. All right, last but not least, Capricorn. We have the new moon happening for you in your 2nd house. And this is about your self-worth, about what you value, about your personal resources, money, time, energy. And so you have a chance for a fresh start in this area, Capricorn, and you may want to feel like you need to liberate yourself. You want more freedom with your money, maybe how you spend your money or that kind of thing, right? And there may be a challenge that happens from Uranus in the 5th house because it's squaring this new moon. And the 5th house has to do with your individual creative expression, how you have fun, what sparks joy for you, your children or children who are in your sphere in some way. And so, but the seeds of intention to plant are in that 2nd house. So listen to the intro for all the overview and then focus on your 2nd house. Okay, Cap? All right, that's all 12 signs. Thank you so much for being here, and I will catch you next week. Happy new moon. All right, take care.